On December the 1st, 1945, at a military stockade in Aversa, Italy, German General Anton Dostler was tied to a stake and shot by a firing squad. He was the first German general to be executed by the Allies for war crimes at the end of the Second World War. His execution, ordered by a US military tribunal, was more than a punishment. It was a signal. A signal that, just following orders, would no longer be a viable defence, that those who gave out or carried out illegal orders would be held personally accountable. In this video we explore the circumstances leading up to the execution of General Anton Dostler, the legal and ethical implications of his trial, and the broader historical significance of one man's execution and case. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Anton Dostler was born on the 10th of May 1891 in Munich in Germany. A career military officer, he joined the Imperial German Army in 1910 and served throughout World War I. Like many officers of his generation, he remained in the military throughout the interwar period, eventually becoming a general in the Wehrmacht during World War II. During the war, Dostler served in various command positions, including in France, Russia and finally in Italy. By 1944 he was commanding the 75th Army Corps, stationed in northern Italy. Though he was not known as a particularly high-ranking figure during the war, it was in his final post that his actions would bring him into the spotlight of international justice. The key event that led to Anton Dostler's downfall occurred in March 1944, during the final years of the Italian campaign. As Allied forces advanced northwards through the peninsula, they launched numerous covert operations behind German lines. One such operation, Operation Ginny II, was intended to destroy a railway tunnel near La Spezia, a critical part of the German military supply line. 15 American soldiers from the Office of Strategic Service, the OSS, the precursor to the CIA, were landed on the coast, disguised in civilian clothes, but carrying their American military identification tags. Their mission was to sabotage infrastructure, a common objective in the Italian resistance and Allied intelligence operations. Unfortunately, the team was captured by German troops on March 24, 1944, before they could carry out their objective. They were quickly interrogated and found to be saboteurs. This classification was vital because, under the Geneva Convention and laws and rules of war, saboteurs and spies caught in civilian clothes could be potentially executed. But this legal grey area did not apply neatly to the OSS men. Although they wore civilian clothing, they did not engage in combat, and they did carry a form of identification, their dog tags. Dostler, as the commander of the 75th Army Corps, received the report of their capture. Instead of treating the prisoners as POWs or referring their case to higher authority, he transmitted an order for their immediate execution, citing Hitler's infamous Commando Order, issued in 1942. The Commando Order had been issued by Hitler on October 18, 1942. It decreed that all Allied commandos or special operatives caught behind German lines, even if they were in uniform, were to be executed immediately without trial. This order flagrantly violated the Geneva Convention of 1929, which protected the rights of uniformed prisoners of war. Though many Wehrmacht officers quietly resisted implementing this order, fearing its illegality and the future consequences of a war crimes trial, others followed it. Dostler was one that followed it. When lower-ranking officers hesitated and raised concerns about the legality of executing the Americans, General Dostler reportedly reaffirmed the order and threatened disciplinary action for insubordination if it was not carried out. On March 26, 1944, just 2 days after their capture, the 15 American soldiers were tied together in groups of 5, taken to a remote location, and executed by machine gun fire. Their bodies were then buried in a mass grave. The executions may have gone unnoticed had it not been for the meticulous record-keeping of the German officers involved and the later Allied occupation of northern Italy. After the war, Allied investigators located the mass grave, exhumed the bodies and identified the men. The atrocity sparked outrage in the United States and amongst Allied command. Dostler, who had been taken prisoner by the American forces in May 1945, was now facing trial, not as a POW, but as an accused war criminal. He was handed over to US authorities and brought to trial under American military law in Italy. The trial of General Anton Dostler began on October 8, 1945 in Rome. It was conducted by a US military commission under the authority of General Joseph T. McNarney. The charges against him were clear. He had ordered the unlawful execution of 15 uniformed American prisoners of war in violation of the laws of war. The defence rested almost entirely on one argument: superior orders. Dostler claimed he was merely following the directives of Hitler and acting in accordance with the Commando Order. He insisted that disobedience would have resulted in his own execution or court-martial, and that as a soldier he was bound by duty to obey the orders of his superior. The prosecution countered with forceful logic. Even under military law, they argued, an officer is not permitted to obey an order that is manifestly illegal. The Commando Order had already been condemned by both Allied and some German commanders, and Dostler had full knowledge that executing uniformed prisoners was a clear violation of international law. Furthermore, evidence presented at the trial, documents, correspondence and testimony revealed that Dostler had authority to delay or deny the execution, but chose not to. He also ignored advice from subordinates to appeal the order or reconsider its legality. On October 12, 1945, after only a few days of deliberation, the military tribunal found General Anton Dostler guilty of war crimes and sentenced him to death by firing squad. His appeal was denied by General Eisenhower, and he was not granted clemency. At dawn on December 1, 1945, General Dostler was led out to a courtyard in Aversa. Tied to a wooden stake, blindfolded, and dressed in a field grey Wehrmacht uniform, he faced a 10-man American firing squad. An army chaplain read him the last rites. At 8 a.m, the volley of shots rang out. A doctor stepped forward and confirmed death. The body of Anton Dostler was then later reburied in Pomezia German military cemetery. The Dostler case was a legal milestone. It set a precedent for the rejection of the superior order's defence in a war crimes trial, a principle which would later be enshrined during the Nuremberg trials and influence international law for decades to come. The tribunal declared, I quote, "An order to commit a criminal act can never be a justification or excuse for the one who carries it out." This was a watershed moment in the evolution of international humanitarian law. It established a personal responsibility of military leaders and combatants for actions taken in war, even if those actions were ordered by a superior. The Nuremberg Charter, created just weeks after Dostler's execution, incorporated this principle in Article 8, which states that the following orders does not relieve individuals from responsibility under international law. Moreover, Dostler's case demonstrated that the Allied powers were serious about holding German officers accountable not only just for genocide or crimes against civilians, but for violation against enemy combatants as well, a concept that had not always been consistently enforced in prior conflicts. Not all reactions to Dostler's execution were uniformly supportive. Some German commentators at the time argued that the trial was victor's justice, conducted solely by American tribunal, without allowing for international or German legal participation. Others pointed to the fact that Allied forces themselves had committed questionable acts during the war, including the treatment of German POWs in camps or the bombing of civilian centres. In this light, some saw Dostler's execution as selectively applied justice. However, the overwhelming consensus amongst historians today is that the execution was legally and morally justified. The OSS men were clearly identified as American servicemen. Their execution without trial or judicial process was a deliberate act of reprisal, an act that Dostler had full agency to prevent. So the execution of General Anton Dostler was a moment of reckoning at the dawn of a new international order. As the ashes of World War II settled, the world was beginning to understand the necessity of legal frameworks that could hold individuals, not just nations, accountable for crimes committed during war. Dostler's trial marked the beginning of that transformation. His story remains one of the first chapters in the modern history of war crimes prosecution, and it paved the way for the broader systems of justice that we see today in international courts, from The Hague to Geneva. In life, General Anton Dostler was a soldier. In death, he actually became a symbol of justice in a post-war world seeking order, morality, and accountability. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.